There was an update in the Tyler Robinson case, who's accused of murdering Charlie Kirk in a very public assassination that happened back in September. Tyler Robinson had actually moved to disqualify the Utah County Attorney's Office, said there was some kind of a conflict, which I was kind of curious about because I didn't really understand why, there would be a conflict. The judge has now issued a ruling denying that, so the Utah prosecutors will remain on the case. But I went and got the actual ruling that I wanted to go over because I was curious for the reasoning behind that. So I'm going to go over that briefly, but about the same time as this update was happening in his case, we also got this trailer from Candace Owens about, it's like I don't know if it's a documentary or a series, which is supposed to be looking into Erika Kirk. Candace Owens obviously has some other ideas about what happened to Charlie and who was behind it. Officially, the state is charging Tyler Robinson, so I'm mostly interested in what's going on in that actual court case. But I will watch the documentary mostly out of curiosity more than anything else. I know that this feud between Candace Owens and TPUSA, Erika Kirk, has been like a big thing online lately. I don't follow either one of them really closely, so it's hard for me to kind of keep up with all that and the reasoning for people's strong opinions on that. So I think I will watch whatever she's putting out and then try to look at both sides and see why people feel so passionately about that. I know, of course, TPUSA sent a cease and desist. My understanding is that her contract requires non-disparagement for a certain amount of time, and she's still under that obligation. So I feel like there probably is a lawsuit coming. So that is the only reason I'm really going to even get into this at all. I feel like that's an inevitability at this point. I don't know who's going to win that lawsuit, but I feel like it's definitely coming. So first, let me go over Tyler Robinson updates. So this is what the judge wrote when he made his ruling on this motion to disqualify the county attorney's office. Defendant argues that a high-level prosecutor assigned to this case has a concurrent conflict of interest and, because no efforts were made to screen him, the entire office should be disqualified. Because defendant has not established a factual basis for a finding of conflict of interest or an objective appearance of impropriety rising to a constitutional concern, his motion is respectfully denied. The judge says there were a couple of hearings on this, and then based on those hearings, they make the following findings of fact. Chad Grunander, a prosecutor assigned to this case, is the chief deputy at the Utah County Attorney's Office. On September 10th, his daughter attended a rally at Utah Valley University featuring Charlie Kirk. She sat in the back of the university courtyard, approximately 85 feet away from where Mr. Kirk was speaking. Shortly after the rally began, she heard a popping noise and heard a man say he's been shot. She, along with other members of the crowd, ran out of the courtyard into a nearby building. Daughter felt afraid for her life while she was running, but felt better when she reached the building. Daughter texted her father. She told him someone was shot. She heard it was Charlie Kirk. She heard the gunshots, and she was okay. Following the incident, daughter has not experienced any trauma, emotional difficulty, or change to her routine. Daughter was not interviewed by any member of law enforcement or the prosecution team until after the current motion was filed. When Mr. Grunander received the text messages from his daughter, he was startled and concerned for her welfare, but he felt better when she notified him that she was okay. He shared the text with the Utah County Attorney, Jeffrey Gray. Eventually, each prosecutor on the prosecution team and at least some law enforcement personnel became aware that Mr. Grunander's child had attended the rally. No effort was made by the UCAO to screen Mr. Grunander from the case or from speaking about his child's experience with other attorneys in the office. But here's where I kind of question, how is that a conflict of interest? Because yes, she saw Charlie Kirk get shot, but objectively, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. She didn't say, to my knowledge or from my understanding of what we just read, who she thinks did it. That doesn't really subjectively change anything. But then again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm sitting here thinking maybe there's just some aspect of this I'm just not seeing. Mr. Gray consulted with his prosecution team, including Mr. Grunander, when determining which charges to file and whether to seek the death penalty, but the ultimate charging decision rested solely with Mr. Gray in his statutory capacity as elected county attorney. He made the decision to file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty at the inception of the case, rather than waiting until after the arraignment, as allowed by statute. His decision to seek death was based upon his assessment that the death penalty is appropriate in this case. He chose not to wait to file the notice because he believed it would cause unnecessary speculation on the part of the public and angst on the part of the alleged victim's family. The daughter's presence at the rally did not materially influence Mr. Gray's decision-making, and the court finds that this conclusion is supported by the credible testimony and objective record before it. And that makes perfect sense to me. I don't really see how that would have materially influenced his decision-making there. Now, whether or not you agree with the death penalty is a whole other thing. I'm just saying, for a prosecutor to decide they want to pursue the death penalty in a murder case, that's not an abnormal thing. This doesn't seem to be something that had any sort of contribution to that decision. And then the judge mentions here that no evidence was provided by the daughter that was not available from other sources. The state has chosen not to call her as a witness in support of its prosecution of defendant. The judge mentions here that defendant, and that's Tyler Robinson, argues that Mr. Grunander's relationship with daughter creates a significant risk and that his decision-making will be and has been materially limited by a personal interest, namely his loyalty to his daughter. Because no screening was in place to prevent Mr. Grunander's conflict from tainting the entire prosecution team, defendant argues that the UCAO should be disqualified from prosecuting this case. This is especially so because Mr. Grunander holds a supervisory role in the office and is a key part of the prosecution team. Like, thousands of people who were there saw Charlie Kirk get shot. It's not like his daughter was providing any new information. The judge writes here that the record does not show that Mr. Grunander's professional judgment has been or is substantially likely to be materially limited by loyalty to his daughter. Speculation regarding potential influence is insufficient to establish a significant risk under Rule 1.7. The court has independently reviewed the evidentiary record with particular attention to whether any direct or indirect decision-making in this case reflects personal involvement, inconsistent with objective prosecutorial judgment. The court finds no such evidence. Tyler Robinson had argued that two decisions could have been impacted by Mr. Grunander's relationship to his daughter, which was the decision not to call her as a witness and the decision to seek the death penalty. It says, the court is persuaded by the evidence presented that daughter is not being called to testify because she has no uniquely relevant testimony to give and the state has access to much stronger evidence to other witness. I think they meant to write the court is not persuaded. I think that was a typo. The judge also writes, to the extent defendant believes his due process rights are violated by the state declining to call her as a witness, the defendant also has subpoena powers and a right to call her himself if he believes her testimony is important to his case, which I don't know why it would be. You know, I don't think she could really say anything that would help his defense other than, yep, I saw someone get shot. I was there. I heard gunshots. I think Charlie got shot. I mean, that doesn't really help his case or hurt it, other than to say he was shot, which like everyone and their mother already knows, you know? As to the decision to seek death, the court finds that daughter's presence at the rally did not factor into the prosecutorial analysis. The evidence supports that Mr. Gray's decision was grounded in his assessment of the facts and applicable law. Even if Mr. Gray considered the impact on daughter when deciding to seek death, defendant has not shown that the impact of a crime on victims, witnesses, or even prosecutors themselves is an unconstitutional consideration when deciding to seek the death penalty. In sum, the court concludes there is not a significant risk that Mr. Grunander's loyalty to his daughter has or will materially limit his representation of the state of Utah. The judge mentions that Tyler Robinson requested the court consider whether or not the UCAO followed the process recommended by their best practices that's created by the statewide Association of Prosecutors in determining whether to disqualify the UCAO. So they argue that the best practices say that a prosecutor should avoid the appearance of bias based upon public perception. So Mr. Grunander should have been immediately screened from the rest of the office, and since the office didn't do that, there's now a hint that the decision to seek the death penalty was an emotional response to Mr. Grunander's concern for his daughter. The first couple of things that come to mind are, number one, the best practices document. I don't think that's like a legally binding thing. That's not a law. They don't have to follow it. They probably should, but they don't have to. At least that's to the best of my knowledge. If somebody else knows otherwise, please let me know. And second is that this like hint of bias and in the decision to seek the death penalty, I feel like that's very unpersuasive because this is an extremely high profile murder of a pretty famous political figure. He wasn't a politician, but he was a political figure, and that he was, you know, most of what he did was politically related. And he did a lot of work supporting certain candidates and the like. So this is obviously a very high profile thing. I think the decision to seek the death penalty was an obvious one. I think a lot of people would be confused if they hadn't decided to pursue the death penalty in this kind of a case. And I'm also more compelled to think that the impact on the victim's family is going to be more driving in that decision versus the impact on Mr. Grunander's daughter. This is just like not very convincing to me at all. I think the judge made the right decision here. He writes, the best practices document is not controlling on this court, and even if it was, the court is unpersuaded that Mr. Grunander's relationship with daughter creates an appearance of bias in this case. Prosecutors need not be immune to the emotional response of others to prosecute a case. Indeed, it is part of a prosecutor's duty to interview witnesses and victims and evaluate the impact of an alleged crime. If honestly convinced of the defendant's guilt, the prosecutor is free, indeed obliged, to be deeply interested in urging that view by any fair means. True disinterest on the issue of such a defendant's guilt is the domain of the judge and the jury, not the prosecutor. So the judge says the relationship between Mr. Grunander and his daughter does not create a reasonable perception that prosecutorial discretion was exercised for improper reasons. Like I said, I think that was the right decision. I don't think the defense made a very compelling argument there. So really briefly, let me touch on this Candace Owens trailer and her investigation into Erika Kirk. And I saw this article that says MAGA eats itself alive ahead of Candace Owens' Erika Kirk expose. And I was kind of confused by that because I don't feel like Candace Owens, though I don't follow her every day, maybe she's changed her mind. I was seeing lots of posts about Candace Owens being very critical of Trump. I didn't really think that Candace Owens was MAGA anymore, unless maybe the person who wrote this article is talking about the people within MAGA fighting over Erika Kirk and Candace Owens fighting, which is just getting confusing to me. This says the conservative movement credited with propelling Donald Trump to victory is tearing itself apart with claims of satanic influence and paid smear campaigns over an upcoming investigative series. The trailer for Bride of Charlie, which will premiere this Wednesday, opens with coverage of Charlie's killings before pivoting to his wife, now CEO of Turning Point, and ends with Erika wearing a crown. The trailer immediately detonated on the right. And I'm not going to read this whole article here, but I saw the headline and I was like, hold on a second, what's going on? I guess some MAGA or Donald Trump linked influencers are saying it's harassment, it's depraved to go after Erika Kirk like that. Social media has been flooded since Monday with conservatives branding Owens a demon, among them popular right-wing account CatTurd2, who declared Tuesday that she was pure evil and a demon straight from the bowels of hell. Look, no matter your opinions on this, I'm just thinking that there are people out there who are fighting with somebody called CatTurd, and I just think that's kind of funny. And then, of course, you have some people who are saying that there's like near identical wording across dozens of posts, and they're claiming there's a smear campaign of people paid to bash Candace online. And I'll be honest, there's lots of bots on the internet, especially when it comes to political issues, who are going to use like similarly worded posts. But there's also a lot of real people who feel very strongly about these things. So yeah, I guess this article is like talking about the feud between like right-wing influencers or social media users amongst themselves, I guess. I don't know. I was a little confused by the title here. Because I was thinking it was about Candace and Erika fighting, and I was like, well, Candace isn't really MAGA anymore, I don't think. I mean, there was a point where I would have thought she was, but at least from what I've seen, and like I said, I don't follow her all that closely, so somebody can correct me if she is, in fact, a MAGA, but like, I don't get the impression that she is. And this is not a commentary of my political views. I'm just describing what I'm seeing here. And I don't want to get copyright struck, so I don't know if I can actually watch this on the video, but I did watch it. It opens up with some clips, news clips about Charlie Kirk's death. And then it shows Erika Kirk's statements and responses when she's speaking at different events or when she was on the Charlie Kirk show after his death. And then it kind of shows how Erika became the CEO. And it's like clips talking about the merch sales and calling her husband's memorial service or whatever that was service, the event of the century, and basically just pointing out some aspects of how she's behaved in the aftermath that people feel is weird. I don't feel like I'm leaning towards either side of this dispute right now. I will comment more on that after I watch whatever she's actually going to put out. And the only reason I'm even going to pay attention to this is because it's happening kind of with Tyler Robinson's murder trial happening in the background. You know what I mean? I will say this, though. The recreation of the tent where he was shot under, I don't know. That's a little weird for me. I don't want to judge people. You know, I try not to judge people for how they deal with their own stuff. But like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, I feel like that's a little awkward, honestly. I do. I feel like that's pretty weird. The photo op under the tent is a little interesting. And that's not evidence that she had anything to do with anyone's murder or plotted or anything like that. It's just weird. And then they flash a few clips describing some of the theories about what happened to Charlie, as well as this recent kind of controversy around Erika talking to younger girls through text messages, which I haven't actually seen myself. I've heard about that and I've read, social media posts about it. I don't think I've actually seen the messages. So I won't say too much about that at this moment. I'm just kind of describing I'm just kind of taking in what I'm looking at here. So it says episode 1, February 25th. That's today, of course. So yeah, I'll watch it. If for nothing else than just to like have an idea of what people are saying is going on so I can understand. My immediate thought is like, you're under an NDA and you were just threatened with a lawsuit if you continue to violate that NDA. I think that's probably a bad idea if you don't want a lawsuit. But I mean, she gets to make her own decisions. If she says, screw the contract, screw the NDA, then that's what she's going to do. And if she does anything that's like legally wrong related to her contract, then she'll face legal consequences for that. I mean, that's really all I can say about that at the moment. But I just wanted to do a quick update on that. So that's all I got for right now. Thanks, guys. And I'll see you all soon.